Alright, guys, before we get into this episode of Sceam Me Up Botty, I just want to take a little moment to ask you if you get a moment, check out the website coinsagemedia.com for all the other content that I create online. There's also a Patreon, and I'm not going to assume anybody's going to be interested in that there, but you can check out the Patreon as well at patreon.com/coinsagemedia. Everything that I'm doing here is not just science fiction. There is a review channel on YouTube called Rodney Stewart Reviews. There's a vlog channel, Rodney Stewart Every Day. Of course, you've got Sceam Me Up Botty. There's an hour podcast if you're into horror. There is Hellmouth Hotline. And there's a few short film attempts that I made over the years. So, if interested, take a little look see and see what you think, especially the website. I don't really give a crap about the Patreon, to be fair. I'm just doing this because I am a science fiction nerd. Alright, you beautiful science fiction friendly folk, we're getting into Star Trek, the original series again, with the episode The Changeling. This is season 2 of the original series, episode 3. Great little episode, one I pretty much enjoy, but the reception for it didn't seem to be the best as far as the first one I came across. There was a review done by The Guardian, made a list of Star Trek personal favourite episodes to watch. Not necessarily the best. That included The Changeling. A retrospective found the episode disappointing for the original series, ranking it a 4 out of a 10. This guy thought that the concept was decent, but felt that the tone was unfitting. Various extreme events happen in the episode. Billions of Malurians are killed off screen. Scotty is killed by Nomad, then resurrected. Uhura has her memories wiped, and 4 security officers are killed. Yet the characters do not seem to grapple with this. The crew has their normal banter and are oddly blasé about the situation. And the episode closes with a joke from Kirk, who also disliked the episode, leaving unexplained how Uhura was restored. That's a fair review, and I really should have left us to the end of the episode. But Time magazine named Nomad the franchise's 8th best villain. The same year, CNET included Nomad as one of the 26 powerful spacecraft of the Star Trek franchise. And 2016, Sci-Fi noted Michelle Nichols' performance as Uhura, rating with this episode, including her 9th best scene in Star Trek. I do have to agree with that there. There's a little moment with Uhura in the episode where she's trying to get re-educated, where she's just... she plays it that well. She's lovable, is the only word I can give her in that moment in the episode. But as far as the plot of the Changeling goes, the Enterprise is investigating a distress call from Malurian star system. When they get there, Spock reports there's no life readings from any of the 4 billion inhabitants of this planet, despite otherwise normal recent communications. The ship's shields are suddenly activated when a meter-long cylindrical object attacks with a powerful energy bolt equivalent to 90 photon torpedoes. Now, the Enterprise can take 4 shots from this thing before the shields drop. The 5th one's going to take them out. Kirk orders to return fire, but the energy of the photon torpedoes is simply absorbed by the object. After a few more of the attacks from this, on the verge of the ship getting destroyed, Kirk then hails the object, and after several back and forth attempts, the object requests in-person communication with the captain, and it allows itself to be beamed aboard the ship. It then identifies itself as Nomad and refers to Kirk as the creator. Now, there is a few parallels with this episode and Star Trek The Motion Picture. Whenever you're sitting watching this here, you'll see what I mean. I should have said at the beginning of the episode, if you haven't checked it out yet, I would highly recommend you go watch Star Trek instead of listening to me talking complete and utter nonsense about it, because the show is indeed that good. The original series, Next Generation, Voyager, DS9, all fantastic. The rewatchability factor of these shows is immense. I never get tired of a little rewatch of this show. I'm dying to get into DS9 especially, but I'm digressing a little bit. So this thing turns up, calls itself Nomad, and starts calling Kirk the creator. Spock reports that a Nomad space probe was launched from Earth during the early 21st century. Its mission was to explore the galaxy and seek out new life, but it had been reported destroyed in like a collision with an asteroid or something. Spock acknowledges that it might have been wrong. This could be the same thing, but nobody knows at this point. The current Nomad has mistaken Kirk for Dr. Jackson Roy Kirk, the scientist who created and programmed the original probe. Nomad's new mission is to seek out and eliminate any biological infestation that it deems imperfect, including the entire population of the Malurian system. Nomad states that its attempts to destroy the Enterprise had not been necessary since the creator was on board. So this is the only thing keeping them alive at this point, is this thing, assuming that Kirk is the creator. So while it's left in the care of a crew member, Spock and Kirk are off, thinking things through, how we're going to get out of this here, working all this shit out. Nomad manages to escape. Nomad hears Uhura singing across the intercom. She's called down to this crew member that's looking after Nomad. Sing, you call him. And she goes through some ship stuff with him and, report to Scotty and everything's sorted out, blah, blah, blah. Repairs from the fight at the beginning of the episode. And she asks him, is there anything else? And he says to hold on a little moment. He goes to check something out, and as he's away, the comms are still connected, and Uhura's passing the time by having a little sing to herself. So Nomad hears this, sneaks out where this guy isn't looking. Spock reports that Nomad space probe was launched from Earth during the early 21st century. I just jumped back in my notes there. Sorry about that there. So this thing fucks off and leaves the room where this guy was supposed to be keeping an eye on it after hearing Uhura singing. And arriving on the bridge to make inquiries, it asks Uhura to think about music while probing her mind, which erases her memory. Scotty tries to intervene to protect her. Nomad kills him on the spot, and pleading self-defense here. Scotty attacked him, so he took him out. Upon learning that Kirk cannot repair Scott, Nomad offers to restore him to life. Nomad heals Scott. Dr. McCoy gives him all the medical records and tips and that there, so this thing can learn how the human anatomy works, and this thing pretty much brings him back to life in the episode. Nomad heals Scott, but he can't repair Uhura's memory loss. Nomad is taken to the brig, and this is the whole time they're trying to get Nomad to do things. They're just they're kind of babying it, if you get my meaning. So They send it down to the brig. It doesn't know it's in the brig essentially, but it's just like a waiting area. That's what Kirk calls it. So yeah, I got lost in my notes again. Uh, yeah, so Uhura's brain was not damaged, only her memories are erased. So this thing can't repair her the way it repaired Scotty. So Dr. McCoy and the medical staff, they start to re-educate her, and by the end of the episode, Uhura is almost back to normal. It is what it is. It's episodic television. Something happens in the episode, and by the end of it, you try and see if you can work it out to the best you can. So essentially, she gets her memory completely erased, absolutely everything. At one point, as I said earlier on, there's a moment there where she just came across as lovable in this part of the episode because she's learning how to read again, and she's going through and she's sounding out words, and the dog has a ball and all that sort of stuff. Chances are you'll probably remember that sort of stuff whenever you were a kid learning how to read, and she's sounding out words, and Dr. McCoy and Nurse Chapel, they're having a talk, and Uhura's on her own trying to work her way through a new book about this dog and this ball, and the ball is blue, and she's sounding out the word blue, and it'd be blue, blue, bluey, bluey. So it's a nice little moment for her in the episode, and plus you get to hear her singing again. She's got a phenomenal little voice. So back to Kirk and Spock. To uncover more information, Spock performs a Vulcan mind-meld with the machine, and he discovers that Nomad collided with a meteor and was severely damaged. It then wandered through space, finally coming into contact and merging with a more powerful alien probe called Tanru. It was designed to obtain and sterilize soil samples from other planets, like as a prelude to colonization. So two probes with two different orders in the beginning, one to seek out new life and the other one to basically find soil samples and like sterilize them, make sure everything's good for someone to move into this planet. So they meet in space and manage to repair themselves, and the merging of the two probes gave Nomad Tanru's vast powers that the original Nomad didn't have. So powers that are sufficient to destroy life throughout an entire solar system. Kirk compares Nomad's reincarnation to the Changeling legend from Earth, in which a human child has switched with a fairy child, and the fairy child assumes the identity of the kid that was taken away. Nomad escapes from the cell, kills two guards who attempt to stop it. The probe makes its way to the engineering deck, where it begins to make adjustments to the engines, accelerating the ship beyond its maximum speed limit. It goes up to like warp 10, keeps getting faster and faster. It's just like it wants perfection, and it decides that it's going to help the creator by making the ship work better. Kirk arrives. Nomad tells him that the engine efficiency has been boosted to 57%. Kirk orders Nomad to restore the changes, but reverse them back to the way they were, as the Enterprise, the structure of the Enterprise can't handle the faster speed. It's going to rip itself apart. Nomad complies. So, yeah, at this point, Kirk is getting more and more annoyed by Nomad's prejudice towards imperfect biological units, as it calls it, the biological units being the humans on board the Enterprise. Kirk points out that its own creator is a biological unit. Nomad responds that it must re-evaluate. Kirk orders the probe back to the brig, and it departs under security guard. Spock then suggests to Kirk that admitting that Nomad, that he, the creator, is an imperfect, person, an imperfect being, was probably a mistake. Kirk, of course, knows this at this point. Spock also observes that because Nomad has threatened to return to its launch point, the Earth and all its inhabitants are now at risk of sterilization. So en route to the brig, Nomad has had a little think and decides that, everybody needs to be killed in this ship. Takes out the two security guards that's taking him down there and instead heads to sickbay. After examining Kirk's medical files and verifying his imperfections as a biological unit, Nomad's re-evaluation is finally complete and it proceeds to engineering and starts incapacitating the crew members and shuts down the life support systems of the ship. This is rendering the Enterprise habitable for only a short time. And, Kirk is like, has the head to head at the end of the episode, and it's fairly genius in how he takes Nomad out. Nomad's decided that, the humans need to die, and he's going to starve them all of oxygen, suffocate them all, kill them. And the Enterprise, even though it's not perfect either, it can be upgraded. That's the way it looks at it. It kind of sees the Enterprise as, something that can become more just like he did, sort of thing. So Kirk arrives and again confronts the probe, questioning it about its mission. When Nomad declares that its directive to sterilize imperfections allows no exceptions, Kirk points out that Nomad itself is imperfect, since it has mistaken Captain Kirk for its true creator, Jackson Roy Kirk. He then claims that Nomad has committed two other errors by not discovering its own mistake and by not sterilizing itself as imperfect. Nomad begins to analyse the imperfections, or the implications, of Kirk's claims, a process that causes noticeable stress to its systems. And now, in all fairness, at the end of this episode, this thing, it speaks, it's got its little voice, and it's doing what it's doing, it's programmed to do it, but by the end of the episode, whenever Kirk points out all these inconsistencies in its own program and the mistakes that it's making, and the fact that, if something's imperfect, it needs to be destroyed, this starts to essentially freaks Nomad out, and at the end, that's it's screaming, imperfection, reevaluate all this here sort of shit, and at the end, it's going insane by the end of the episode. And in all fairness, I was sitting there watching it and thinking to myself, I kind of feel sorry for the wee thing at this point. So, Kirk and Spock carry Nomad in a rush, take him to the transporter room, and with a final command from Kirk to exercise your prime function, they beam it out into deep space. Seconds after it, transport is finished and it materializes in space. An explosion is detected near the Enterprise, and Nomad has taken himself out at the end of the episode. The episode ends on a humorous note, with Kirk observing that, he's proud that his son Nomad, having healed Mr. Scott, would have made a good doctor. And you get that little Scooby-Doo ending at the end of this episode. Yeah. There's a moment there between him and Spock as well, whenever Spock is congratulating Kirk on how he resolved the situation with Nomad, and a brilliant display of logic. And Kirk jokingly says, you didn't think you had it on me, did you, Spock? And Spock just dryly looks at him and goes, no. So they have that little joke about, my son, the doctor, sort of thing. And we close out at that there. But as we say here in the reception that I was looking at earlier on, that kind of feels off at times. I can sit and watch an episode and I can take from it what I take from it, but other people can see other things that I'm not going to see. And that review by Keith R.A. Decondido, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name again, did the original series retrospective, ranked it 4 out of 10, thought the concept was decent, but felt the tone was unfitting. Fair enough. Various extreme events happen in the episode. Billions of people are killed off screen, which, I don't take that as a criticism of the episode. It as a science fiction series, and they made in the 60s, set in the future, but made in the 60s, and just why the heck are you gonna show that on, the budget that you had at that time? Like, you couldn't have shown a planet getting destroyed back then. So the only way to do it was to just do it the way they did it in the episode. Just like, all right, there's meant to be a planet full of people here. There's not. They're all dead, Jim. And that was in this episode as well, McCoy, whenever Spock gets killed. I drive my brother and see him. We're sitting watching different shows over the years, and a lot of I was going to say science fiction. A few little science fiction things pop in there, but there's 70 shows and 80 shows that he's been getting me into over the years, and we're sitting watching different things, and every once in a while something will happen in an episode, and somebody gets killed, and somebody at some point will say he's dead. And every time I hear somebody say he's dead on anything, I automatically go Jim after I hear the words he's dead. Jim. Drives the brother insane, but it was in this episode. Scotty gets taken out by Nomad. McCoy goes over to check him out. And he's like, he's dead, Jim. And every time I hear McCoy say he's dead, Jim, I was like, yo! So, the thing with for Uhura in the episode, getting her memories wiped, by the end of the episode, she's gone from like a grade 2 reader, sounding out words, to at the end of the episode, McCoy walks in and says, well, she's up to college level now in her rehabilitation, so she'll be back in duty in no time at all. So it's a bit unbelievable from that perspective. The fact that all these killings happened on the Enterprise and nobody takes a moment to, like, mourn them in a way is a bit out of place. I'll give the guy that did this little review. But yeah, all red shirts getting killed in this episode, which is a thing. So I was looking here online, I was chatting away here, I was just going through different stuff, found the reception that it got. Influence as another one I found here, and it says the episode is perhaps not known for being the predecessor of the 1979 film Star Trek the Motion Picture, which also features an Earth probe that somehow merges with a more powerful alien entity far from Earth and causes problems as V'ger. The plot arc of human imperfections and foibles confusing a powerful but malfunctioning robot, also seen in the Star Trek episode The Return of the Archons, as well as various pieces of science fiction, pulp fiction, would go on to become a common trope in sci-fi. To this point of parody and more comedically inclined work such as Futurama. In 2001, the writers of Star Trek Enterprise episode Civilization used the Malurians as the antagonists in reference to this episode. So there you go. There is a little nugget from future episodes of this podcast, and it's going to be a hell of a long time before we get as far as Enterprise, but I'm going in friggin' chronological order for everything that's ever happened with Star Trek. So hopefully we'll be doing this 5 days a week. Once we finally finish Star Trek the original series, we're going to be doing the Star Trek the animated series, and a little series that most people have forgotten that even existed. It seems to be, like, any time I mention it, nobody seems to know it even existed. I remember it being on repeats whenever I was a kid. I remember seeing bits and pieces of it, but that is definitely one I know I've watched at one point in my life. Like, you're going back, I'm 47 years old now, so I'm going back to summer holidays in primary school whenever I was probably 6 or 7 years old, watching the animated Star Trek. back then, so I'm dying to get into that one. And of course, as soon as we finish with that there, on to the next generation, DS9, Voyager, Enterprise, and then the absolute cluster nonsense that is new Star Trek. But we'll get there in due course. I think that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Just before we go again, I just want to say one more time, if you do get a second, check out the website for me, coinsagemedia.com, for everything else that I'm doing. Stay safe, and I will talk to you in the next episode. This has been a production of Coins Age Media. Thank you so much for listening.